One of the big questions is, what is money?
Practical purposes, it exists in a series of heterogeneous databases, very different databases.
Do you believe in crypto?
Digital currency may be an answer. It is the highly speculative asset.
I do own Bitcoin.
There is no second best.
Welcome to the Crypto Curious podcast. Every Wednesday, we dive into the dynamic world of cryptocurrency. If you're new to crypto, we recommend starting with our early episodes where we break down the basic and give you a solid foundation to understand the crypto world. And for the Crypto Curious, the seasoned addict or the industry insider, we're here to help you unpack the latest digital news. This week, we'll talk through the main news points, including how the end of the US government shutdown has sparked a crypto market rally. And we've got so much news to get through. But this week, Blake and myself are joined by the one and only Daxx, or AKA Kyle Stagol. You might remember Kyle from earlier this year. His episode was a fan favourite, actually. We've had 4 or 5 people say, when are you getting Kyle back? So he's here today to talk all things markets and charts, and also where he sees the next phase of the cycle going. So thanks for joining us, Daxx. Thanks for being here.
No worries. And thanks for those 4 people that wanted to hear from me again. I feel very honoured.
Well, look, you know what? Again, look, everyone loved that episode, and so did I. I wasn't on it. It was a boys only, yourself, Blake and Craig. It was a great episode. So thanks for being with us here today.
No worries. Thanks for having me, guys.
Look, let's jump straight into the big story this week, everybody, and that is the US government shutdown saga has finally reached a resolution, or at least a temporary one. Overnight, the Senate voted to advance a funding bill to reopen the government, and this is ending the weeks of uncertainty that has been weighing on all of the markets. The reaction was instant. The global markets rallied, and the crypto markets certainly joined in. Bitcoin climbed around 1.3%, Ethereum jumped more than 3%, and the sentiment really did shift to risk on, I guess. And I suppose we know investors, it's not just about politics, it's about confidence, isn't it, boys? What did we see here? Daxx, I know you've spoken about this one already. How did you see this market playing out?
Well, I mean, the most important thing that most people aren't looking at unless they know how to read charts is that we're holding one of the key levels that I look at, which is the rolling VWAP, which is pretty much sitting right on 100K. Now, we've tested this level twice before in this bull market and bounced off. The last 2 extreme panic big dumps tested that same level, and now it's basically like a moving average, right? It's sitting at 100K. So we pretty much had to hold that, and then we got a couple of really nice reversal triggers overnight, and we kind of predicted, or were hoping / predicting, that we were going to get the reopening pass on Sunday night. And so, you know, I was lucky enough to position myself quite nicely. And then we got the good news coming through and we managed to nail that one. But I did kind of cheat. One of the senators, Mark Wayne, was talking about it a couple of days out after the New York City mayoral voting was all passed through in New York. And he said, now the Democrats are going to come back to the table to negotiate. So I sort of got a little bit of a hack just watching the news. And he ended up being correct that they were going to reopen after Sunday. And there's still a few things that has to go into place, right? So obviously this has flipped the sentiment a little bit, but I don't think we're completely out of the woodwork. We are kind of hitting resistance right now. So we do have to reclaim 107.5, in my opinion, to really consider this to be bullish again. But we can break the downtrend, which is kind of sitting around 108 at the moment. We can trigger a technical pattern called a falling wedge. That would create a new, much more bullish narrative in the market. And because there's multiple types of narratives in markets all the time. There's like the news cycle and everything that's going on with that. But then at the same time, there's also the narrative that's going on the charts. If there's a big high time frame pattern like that then gets confirmed, a lot of the traders and the high time frame investors and stuff like that understand how to read charts, they will jump on that narrative as well. So I think it's important to understand both narratives at the same time. And we were basically on the last line of defense from flipping into a bear market. Because typically every single time we've ever dropped the 365-day moving average, that's a rolling VWAP. And some people look at the 50-week moving average as well as a key level. If you're above or below that, typically you break either of those and you go into a bear market. We've never not broken it and not going into a bear market. So Yeah, I was clenching my butt cheeks all last week. Let's just put it that way.
I think that's really great to hear some technical things that you're looking at, Dax, but that really segues well into the next section that we wanted to discuss, particularly about the 4-year market cycle. Now, historically, since Bitcoin was founded, we've seen this cyclical pattern or this rhythm to Bitcoin where we see that 4-year patterns, 3 years of up, 1 year of down, and many people in the crypto ecosystem are now calling for the end of the current cycle based on a time-based metric, just a number of days from the bottom of the bear market. So do you think that we've seen the top, that's it, pack it in for the next 12 months, come back, go on holiday, or things have changed, things are different? Is this time different, Dax?
Well, I mean, I hate to be that guy that says this time it's different, but I think we can all agree that this cycle, or this year specifically, is completely different to anything else we've seen, especially for what you would say is the final year of the bull market. It's been completely different. Like, I think Bitcoin's only up 13%. I've never seen, in my 10 years of trading crypto, I've never seen something like that unless it's a bear market. Like, we've never had a year that's gone sideways. It's either dumped or rallied and been up hundreds of percent.
Yeah. I was looking at that. I was definitely looking at that today. Bitcoin's the same price it was 12 months ago. Ethereum's the same price it's been for the last 7 years, it feels.
We've been outperformed by the stock market, which I think is probably the most embarrassing thing for crypto traders, that's for sure, and the believers. But at the end of the day, like what we're seeing, if you look at all the on-chain metrics, there's massive distribution by long-term holders, which are holding a wallet for more than 155 days, or for OG wallets that have been holding those coins for more than 7 years. And if you look at the metrics when they're spending more than $100 million, and then you can look at other metrics where they're spending more than $1 billion, it's the whole time, since we got above 100K, it's just like constant spending. And one of the things I'm tracking at the moment is the whale wallets, which is holding 1,000 to 10,000 BTC. They've finally stopped selling literally at the end of last week. So that's finally come back into being net buyers. And they've just pretty much been dumping the entire time we've been in this range.
Yeah. And just to translate that for a little bit for some of our listeners, you can analyze coin wallets on the blockchain, and those people that hold substantial amounts of Bitcoin, they've been selling above $100,000 and putting a lot of sell side pressure into the market. And that's probably because these people bought Bitcoins for $1, $10, $100. And they're like, oh, Bitcoin's at 100,000 now. It might be a good time to take profits.
Yeah, exactly. Big psychological level to sell at. And a lot of them are thinking about the 4-year cycle as well. I think you'd be crazy not to be looking to at least risk off some here if you'd had a couple $100 million, a couple $1 billion in Bitcoin, and you'd bought that for $100. I think it'd just be silly not to be risking off, especially with the year that we've had. So it makes complete sense to me, like, is it from an investor standpoint?
And something that goes hand in hand with that 4-year cycle, and you've spoken about this in some of your clips as well, for those following Daxx, you'll see this, is the monetary policy view. Obviously, we've got a faltering economy over in the US, and the Fed like to start their money printer to save it, and then the markets follow this. When do you think that comes into play?
Probably sometime next year. So at the moment, we're in a phase where they've just started lowering rates again. And we're most likely going to get a cut. What is it? I think 10th of December is the next FOMC. Most likely going to get a cut then, unless CPI is like crazy high. I'm expecting a cut then anyway. And then we're going to get I think more importantly, the thing for people to watch is we're going to get the announcement of who the next Fed chair is going to be soon. And we're going to see how dovish he is. And I think they're going to be coming out and painting this narrative. Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, and Donald Trump, and whoever the new Fed chair is going to be that they nominate, they're going to be painting this narrative that they're going to be outgrowing this $37 trillion of debt that they have. And I think that's going to be very bullish for markets. Maybe Jerome Powell, I feel like him and most of the Fed are extremely left-wing bias, right? So they have this huge expectation of inflation. Whenever they actually had to stop, the hedge funds have actually had to stop taking in the survey data, because whenever they interview anybody that is Democratic leaning, they just think that inflation is going to be like 30%. It's like next year, like it's just the numbers are so skewed based on your political beliefs. If you ask anybody who's Republican leaning, they're like, oh yeah, between 1% and 3%. Ask anyone who's like Democratic leaning and they're 5% to 30%. So, now a lot of hedge funds, they use polymarket data instead because they reckon it's more accurate.
Yeah. But not all inflation is equal. In some areas, I think, that are more left-leaning, maybe New York, San Fran, inflation could be a lot higher. In regional areas, it could be a lot lower. Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic there.
It could be paying part of it as well. But yeah, I think that's coming into wrap it back to the 4-year cycle. I think all of this is in where the monetary policy is. We're moving into a phase where we're going to be into the phase of the market, which usually creates a big rally, right? So, we nailed the cycle top back in 2021. We called that quite accurately, and we're at a completely different spot. So yes, that was the end of the 4-year cycle timing band, but the Federal Reserve was going from massive quantitative easing to quantitative tightening. And since then, they've pulled out $2.3 trillion out of the economy, right? And now they're getting to the point where probably next year, they're going to start going back to quantitative easing. So the market could be really choppy and not really that amazing until the QE narrative really starts to pick up again. And that could be until the end of next year. So one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is, maybe we are in a 4-year cycle top timing band right now. We do end up having a 6-month bear market or something. The new Fed chair comes in June next year, and then the whole new narrative picks up and we go back to QE mindset and things start to take off again from there.
Okay, so you're obviously tens of thousands of people don't follow you for no reason and no pressure, Daxx, but you're saying then that you're thinking a top late this year, or are you saying it's going to roll into 2026 and then have the cooling off?
Look, there's two theories I'm kind of drawn between two at the moment, right? But if I had to put my money on one of them, I would say more likely the cycle will extend until I think the end of next year. That doesn't mean that we're just going to continue to pump the entire time either. We might have a 40% pullback between now and when we find a cycle bottom sometime in the middle of next year, and then have a really big rally after that as well. I think at the end of the day, Bitcoin and crypto is a really strong macro asset. And at the moment, we're kind of in a situation where the government and the Federal Reserve liquidity process is in a bit of a limbo at the moment. We don't really know, how much they're going to be lowering rates. We don't really know, how dovish they're going to be. But I think once we get Jerome Powell out of the way and then we get whoever next Donald Trump's Fed chair in, I think that's going to create a lot of certainty, and they're going to be pushing one message. They're going to lower rates and they're going to start supercharging the economy, which means stimulus packages, right? And they're going to outgrow the debt. And I think they have a really unique opportunity to do that because the robotics and AI crossing over with this type of a government coming into place, which is all about growth and boosting business and everything like that. We probably have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity right now for them to get out of their debt and significantly grow the GDP enough, with tariffs and with GDP growth, because the biggest problem you have with growing your GDP is you need more people to earn more money, right? But now we're going to have a massive productivity boost because you can just, instead of creating a new person, which takes about 20 years to get them into the workforce, right? You can just create a robot that then does people's jobs. And that adds a lot of GDP. We're already seeing that across the board at the moment. That's why stock market's doing so well, because a lot of companies are saving heaps of money by employing AI, by employing robotics and stuff like that into their businesses. And that's why earnings have been so good this year and so many stocks have massively outperformed the crypto market. So the question is, are we 4-year cycle topping right now? We definitely could be. And I think we'll probably find out in about a month or two. So feel free to get me back on the show and I'll let you guys know then.
We'll give you a call, yeah.
But I think the key level for people to watch is, can we get back above 107.5 or not? And once we're back above 116.5, we're pretty much in the clear. I think that will line up really well with things like the Clarity Act coming out, which I think we're planning on talking about a bit later, because that could be a massive boost to markets. Because at the moment, what we have is retail traders and OGs massively selling their bags to institutions and high net worths. And it's basically a war between, is the selling pressure going to win out, or is the buying pressure going to eventually win out? And I think eventually the buying pressure will win out because macro is going to stay strong enough for long enough. If you look at the ISM, for example, is one of the things I was talking to boys about when I was on earlier in the year. It's the longest it's ever been below 50, which means the economy is in a contractionary phase right now. Once that finally gets above 50 and runs to 60, that's typically when Bitcoin goes through its final leg and it goes into its blow off top. And the other chart to watch is the Russell 2000, which is just trying to get back above its previous all-time highs as well. So like you look at the ISM chart and you look at the Russell 2000, and typically when both of those take off, that's telling us that there's a lot of activity in the economy. People are there's a lot of money circulating. At the moment, it's the opposite. It's the longest ever it's been in contraction. So once that finally starts to expand, which I think is going to happen next year, especially with Fed changing their policy with the new Fed chair, that's when I think things are going to finally heat up for crypto. And it could be a rough, choppy market until then.
Yeah. There's just one on this topic. There's just one final thing I wanted to raise was the liquidations about a month ago. We saw $20 billion of liquidations. I think that there's going to be a lot of skeletons in the closet with that one, and people trying to figure out how they're going to manage the situation, from investors to professional fund managers, traders, and the like. What's your take on that? Like, I think it was 10 times larger than the second largest liquidation event, and no one's really talking about it.
Yeah, I know, right? Maybe none of the exchanges and talking heads want to talk about it because a couple of them might be in trouble. Yeah, there was all that stuff recently going on with MEXC, which was a bit concerning, but seems like that went away pretty quickly. Everyone's scared about another FTX type blow up, right? And obviously when people get liquidated on an exchange, the exchange takes over that position, just doesn't disappear, and the exchange just steals people's money, which is what most people think, right? When you get liquidated, the reason why you get liquidated and lose the money in your account is because the exchange is now at risk and they have to take that money to cover their own position. And I think that's why a lot of these markets, they went all the way down, liquidated people at bottom, but now they've rolled back over. And typically what you see is a market will always come back and take out the wick low of a massive capitulation event like that. And in my opinion, it's because the exchanges push it down with their market makers, and then they get to square up all their bags and get out of any bad positions that they might have been forced to take over from liquidations, right? So that has happened now, which has definitely been one of the big things weighing down on the market, because some of those wicks were crazy low, especially on altcoins. But most of the majors are taking them off now. And hopefully, no, we're not going to see an exchange or something like that go down, which would cause follow-on effects or any large funds that then have to liquidate a huge amount of bags. It looks like no bodies have floated to the surface, and we should be okay, I think, going forward.
Okay, look, we're gonna have to take a break and do our short, sharp news bites. There's loads of them, but I really want to do this really quickly because Craig will want me to ask you as well. I know you've always a Bitcoin bull, got to stack those stats. You say it in your group all the time, but where are you sitting on Ethereum and Solana right now, really quickly?
I like both of them at the moment, to be honest. I'm definitely, this year, Ethereum's definitely won me over. After the Genius Act and everything like that came out, it was obvious Ethereum was going to play catch up. And I was bearish on Ethereum for like 2-3 years when it was clearly in a downtrend against Bitcoin. It was like, why would you hold this thing that's massively underperforming when you can hold the thing that's outperforming? And then we told everyone in our group that it looked like Ethereum was about to start taking over the spotlight at the start of this year when the Genius Act was in process to be passed. And then it finally got passed. And then Tom Lee came out and started promoting BMNR and created that new narrative about all the stable coins running on Ethereum. And so all the banks are going to have to buy Ethereum to stake and secure the network. And it seems to be that is happening at the moment, right? And so Ethereum played massive catch up. So if that narrative sticks around for long enough, and we actually do see the banks start to launch stable coins on Ethereum, and we just have Western Union come out and they're launching a stable coin on Solana. So it's going to be really interesting when we have a big bank come out, like maybe JP Morgan comes out and they're like, we're going to launch JP Morgan coin on Ethereum and we're going to stake $1 billion worth of Ethereum to secure the network. Like that'll be narrative confirmation.
I think didn't we see Alipay come out and say that they're building an L2 on top of Ethereum, 1.4 billion customers payment process. So I think that these are way bigger than JP Morgan and they're already moving in that direction. So fingers crossed it eventuates.
Well, we're glad to hear that Daxx has come to the Ethereum side of things.
I'm on board, guys.
On board. All right. With that, folks, we're going to take a break. But when we come back, our short, sharp news bites. Welcome back. You're listening to the Crypto Curious podcast. Time now for our short, sharp news bites brought to you by the Bamboo app. Who wants to go first? We've got loads of news.
All right. This week, Trump has reported that he wants to distribute the proceeds of the tariffs back to the US citizens in the form of a stimulus, $1 trillion. This is massive if it ever happens. I feel like he's not going to get this one through. It was posted by him on Truth Social a couple of days ago. This is just one of those headline grabbing items, I suspect. But what do you reckon, Daxx? Is he going to do this?
They had to make sure that the weekly chart wasn't going to close under the 50-week moving average. So I'm pretty sure Howard Lutnick might have been like, hey, mate, you might want to post something bullish for crypto here. We don't want it to close under here. And it came out perfectly just before the weekly close. So I think the main thing I wanted to talk about with you guys was the Clarity Act and just a few of the updates that came out over the last 24 hours. I think one of the really important things that I want a lot of people to know and understand is I think it's going to be, they've put in a part of it which is going to combat manipulation by, let's be honest, exchanges and market makers. And the CFTC is actually going to have live oversight of all the exchanges, the same way that they do have over the stock market and commodities market.
Just a step back then. So the CFTC, this is the Commodity Future Trading Commission in the US. So they will have oversight on everything the exchanges do.
Yeah, so you won't be able to do things like spoofing orders, which is highly illegal in the stock market, but is completely legal in our markets. And a lot of people on Twitter have been talking, you probably see it all the time, people constantly posting, Binance is sending all these coins to Wintermute, et cetera, and then all these sell orders get locked in above price, and then all of a sudden we start dumping off massively, and then they send a whole heap of USDT across and they buy it and then send it back. So stuff like that will be illegal, basically. And I think that's going to be really good for traders, and we'll probably get a lot more natural price action, that's for sure. And most likely, we're not going to get any massive dumps like what happened the other day on October 10th that liquidated half of the market. So, yeah, I think that's going to be absolutely massive. For anybody that trades or invests into the crypto market, we'll get a lot more natural price action, because all of the illegal manipulation practices which you see happen all the time in these markets, anybody that, reads the DOM or anything like that, like the level 2 data, you can see it happening all the time. Like people put massive orders above price and price comes up really close to touch in, and they put a little bit higher, and that weighs down on the price and pushes it down. And then eventually they trigger a whole heap of long liquidations. And then sometimes that leads to a liquidating cascade effect, which is what we saw on October 10. You line that up with a little bit of negative news and it can be really bad. So you're not going to be able to do anything like that anymore. And they had a flash crash event. There's actually a book being written about it, and the famous trader Nav ended up going to jail for causing a flash crash from spoofing. And that's why they made all the laws about it. So we're going to have all those same coverages and laws and everything like that coming in. When we have the Clarity Act and all this stuff gets passed, it's going to be a massive green flag and basically opens the door to all these institutions to actually finally start really getting involved in a big way, like all the banks and everything like that.
So any time frame? So they're obviously just talking about this initiative now, but it's still a little ways off from happening.
Yeah, they're trying. I don't know exactly when they're going to finally get it passed, but Trump's been posting, say he wants to get it passed before Christmas.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's good news.
Yeah, exactly. So, we'll see. But I was asking the AI just before, and Grok was telling me start Q1 2026. So let's see.
Okay. Interesting. All right. That's a good news piece. What else have we got, Blake?
All right. Next up, Trump's family raises $450 million for their treasury to buy more Bitcoin. So these guys are going strength to strength. They're raising all the money that they can. So, yeah, great to see that they've still got the momentum going here. And I'm sure they'll keep raising where they can.
Yeah. And a little bit more Trump news. This one is about American Bitcoin. They're a miner backed by Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. And they've just added 4,004 Bitcoin to its holdings, which brings their treasury value to about 415 million. Their firm is now ranked the 25th largest Bitcoin treasury. So the Trump family have now just got their finger in every bit of the Bitcoin pie at the moment, which is good for them. Yeah.
Good for us as well, I think, if you have.
They're going to keep the crypto train rolling, I guess. Yeah.
I can take this one. Kathy Wood, she has downgraded her Bitcoin target price by $300,000 and she's increased her Ethereum treasury holdings. She's basically come out and said that because of the Genius Act that's come out and it's supporting a lot of stablecoins on the Ethereum network, it's reducing what they forecast, some of the forecasts that they had for Bitcoin that would potentially be used for payments or for people to be using for commerce. But now they believe that this will be a little bit chewed up by stablecoins. So interesting thoughts from Kathy. I think she always has really great original thoughts. Yeah.
I love her. It's not a big drop though. So when's this is meant to be the price by 2030? So instead of 1.5, it's 1.2.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Not a massive drop. Okay.
Interesting adjustment. Yeah, I find that this one is the one that really boggled me during the week was the crypto millionaire and wife found murdered in the Dubai desert. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to Dubai anymore.
So what actually happened here? Did you read this story?
Yeah, I don't know if this is true or not, but supposedly he was quite close with, it had something to do with Toncoin and Telegram. And supposedly, like, the rumor is that he stole $500 million from Telegram. I don't know if this is true, like, just a disclaimer. This is just something that a rumor that I was reading. And yeah, so it sounds like the people that killed him and horrifically dismembered him and his wife's body and dumped him in the desert in Dubai, so savage, were Russian. And they've been arrested already and taken back to Moscow. So, yeah, I don't know. That could be like a bit of like Russian mafia action going on or something crazy.
You've just given us a little bit of alpha there with the Ton connection, but who knows whether that's legit or not. But, yeah. Well, look, that's just, yeah, you don't hear those. That's a really unusual story, though. You don't hear that kind of thing too often. That's a bit full on. But, yeah. What's up next? What have we got here? I'm going to roll into this one here with Robinhood. Robinhood Markets revealed that its Q3 revenue hit $1.2 billion, with crypto revenues around 268 million, which isn't massive, but the prediction market contract volume doubled quarter on quarter, which is no surprise, to 2.3 billion. And the firm confirmed its international expansion into the UK and Europe, which is underway. Robinhood going strength to strength there. Prediction markets helping them out, which, as I said, no surprise.
Big fan of Robinhood. Nailed the bottom on that one during the very bottom of the market after the 2022 bear market. So I've been holding that position for about 2-3 years or something now, and it's one of my best trades ever, I reckon. So
nice. Well, if those stimmies get issued by the US government, I'll be buying a Robinhood shares as well there, Dax.
There we go. Pump my bags, baby. Let's go. I'm pumping your ETH bags, so.
Yeah, so Tether has bought about $100 million US or 961 BTC. They're added to their stack of 87,296 Bitcoin and one of the top 6 biggest Bitcoin wallets. So now Tether is the issuer of the stable coin and they're highly profitable and they're allocating 15% of their profits each quarter to buying Bitcoin. So great to see. These guys are going strength to strength and we talk about them all the time here on the show. But that's all, folks. Thanks, Dax, for coming on the show, giving us your insights and letting us know where we're at in the market.
Definitely going to get you back in the new year and just see what's happened and talk about it again. And look, for anyone listening that thought this was really interesting, but maybe there was a bit too much jargon, then follow Dax, listen to what he's got to say. We'll put all his socials into the show notes below and you can find out where you can listen along there as well. But if something wasn't making sense, jump into the Crypto Curious Facebook group and ask us a question here or jump onto wherever you see Dax and ask him a question. I'm sure he'll answer for you. But again, thanks, Dax. Yeah, really appreciate it, mate.
No worries. Thanks a lot for having me on, guys, and we'll catch up again start of the year.
We will be back with you next week. Until then, stay curious, stay connected. You can do this by joining our Crypto Curious Facebook group or our Instagram page. And please hit subscribe wherever you're listening to us now. If you're looking to dollar cost average into the crypto market, take a look at the Bamboo app. Don't forget to use the code CURIOUS for $10 of free Bitcoin to get you started. There's a link in the show notes below. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.